Welcome to season 11 of How to Start Up, the podcast helping you start and scale your business with advice from entrepreneurs on what to do now, next, or never. This season, we'll be hearing about all things productivity from amazing entrepreneurs sharing how they've hacked theirs. Hosted by me, Juliet Fallowfield, founder of the B Corp certified PR communications and podcasting consultancy, Fallowfield & Mason. Our mission is to enable you to master your own storytelling, whether that be via PR or podcasting, all with a long-term view. UK productivity was 24% lower in 2023 than it would have been had it continued climbing at the rates it's seen before the global financial crisis. This is all according to the Economics Observatory. Given time is the most limited factor for any founder, for our 11th season, I've set out to find answers on how we can all improve our productivity in business. First up, I wanted to find out how to scale a business efficiently. So I spoke with Nina Briance, founder and CEO of Cult Mia, the online fashion marketplace for the world's leading sustainable designers. Since founding Cult Mia in 2019, Nina has grown her business to become one of fashion's leading online retailers, and last year closed a seed round at £2.5 million. Keep listening to hear Nina's advice on implementing the right systems for efficient growth and how to let go and delegate to your team. Hi Nina, thank you so much for your time today on How to Start Up. You are the first guest we're talking to about productivity, which is something I know every founder needs to know more about. But before we get into that, I'd love to have a brief introduction as to who you are and a bit about the business that you started.
Absolutely. Really happy to be here this morning with you, Juliet. I'm Nina Briance, founder and CEO of Cult Mia. We're building the marketplace of the future, the home of ethical and sustainable luxury brands.
Amazing. And what year did you launch Cult Mia?
We launched in 2019, so we're coming up to our 5th year anniversary at the end of this year.
Congratulations. I mean, there's some statistic that most businesses don't make it past year 3 and year 4. So fantastic you're looking at year 5. And I know that you did an incredibly successful seed round, I think last year, where you raised £2.5 million. Was that correct?
Yeah, super exciting, especially in our industry where a lot of the big platforms haven't had the best run lately. So we were, I would say, really reassured that everything was pointing in the right direction and to really be able to supercharge growth.
Well, it's not only something to raise, but raising this economic climate is impossible, everyone tells me. So the fact that you've done it, you obviously must be doing something right. So I would love to ask you a bit more about what that is. Before we get into that, though, the episode title, we called it How to Scale Your Business Efficiently. And anyone that's worked with me will roll their eyes a little bit about this because I love a process. I hate double handling. I love being efficient because time is the most precious resource that we have when we're working, or generally even in life. How would you define scaling a business efficiently? It's quite a weird question.
Very simply put, it's achieving more with less.
Yep.
But zooming out a little bit, to me, scaling a business efficiently means growing in a way that really optimizes your resources, maximizes your output, but maintains or improves the quality of whether you're selling a product or a service and how that resonates with your customer. During that journey, it's about, like you said, streamlining processes to really ensure sustainable and scalable growth.
And when you're scaling this business, what would you need to implement before you grow further? Like, are there things that you did at the beginning that really set you up for success?
Yes, no, I think, you can have a really clear game plan when you're launching a business, and then sometimes you scrap it up and go back to the drawing board. But I would say before scaling, I thought it was really important to establish a solid foundation of clear processes and really strong leadership and a scalable business model so that you can ensure that your operations can really handle increased demand, which involves robust systems. If you have, supply chain, or if you have a marketplace, in our case, customer service and financial planning were kind of the key 3 pillars that we looked at.
Yeah, I find this so interesting because when I started, someone said to me, well, are you going to sell it? Is it a lifestyle business? What are you going to do? It's like, I was made redundant. I needed to make up a job. So I just started and I hadn't got to that next step of what am I doing this for? What does success look like? But one thing I did do because of my Chanel training, I would give them credit for this, is be laser focused on we may be small, but we can be mighty. And we wrote a company handbook. Well, actually, it wasn't a company handbook to start with. It was just a process document of this is how we book a courier. This is how we share information as a team, basic things like that. Over the last 4 years, that has grown into the company handbook. Are there any pieces of advice for someone that might not be so detail oriented that they could start with?
In terms of kind of practical tips and advice, I would say clearly time blocking your calendar a week or two in advance. I used to have an approach where I would only book in meetings, but you realize you also have to book in a lot of your own work and really kind of have that protected focus time to find structure for myself. For my team, we looked a lot at aligning at the top first and rolled out very early on into the business an OKR system. Mm-hmm. And we were quite ruthless in saying, if this isn't going to move the needle towards our North Star goals, is it worth doing it at all? And really challenging ourselves and having a framework of 5 whys, which is simply just continuing to ask ourselves 5 times, why are we doing this? Is it moving us in the right direction? So I wouldn't say we had a specific handbook per play, but we had, I would say, the right kind of strategic frameworks in place to keep us in check.
Also, you were thinking things through. And I think when you start a business, you are thrown in at the deep end with so many things you need to consider because you become all the hats and you're building your website, you're working out your payment terms, you're learning how to recruit someone or fire someone or write a company newsletter, all the things you wouldn't have done in your previous day jobs. You can get stuck in the weeds. So I love the fact that you kept thinking big picture before you went into the weeds. Is this going to be the best use of our time? Is this going to get us to where we are going to go to? So did you have an idea at the beginning then where you wanted to take the business? Was it really clear? And has that changed since?
Yeah, I have always kind of anchored this business on the big goal of being the biggest independent fashion destination in the world, underpinned by, I would say, the values of the future. I was dreaming big from the beginning and figuring out, what are the building blocks to get us there? That goal hasn't changed. It's still kind of our biggest North Star. I'd call it our sun, actually. How we've thought about getting there has changed during the last 5 years, but the goal has kind of remained the same, which is interesting.
So far, I think I mentioned before we started recording that you're the 106th interview for this podcast, but everyone says you have to be so resolute in your determination of what you're solving, either the product or service. You have to be the believer like no one else. And when you hit tough times, that kicks in and that resolute belief will help you. But that obviously has also helped you work back into the day-to-day. So is it on like an hour-by-hour basis you'll look at that North Star and think, it sounds like it is, the questioning and everything, but who gets to make the final decision?
It depends. When it comes to kind of big strategic priorities, it's still me. When it comes to how that is executed within departments and on a day-to-day basis, it's our COO and our department heads. So at Coltmia, we have an e-commerce, marketing, and partnerships departments. And I think a really big part of enabling this business to get to a bigger scale was learning when and how to take a step back and learning when to not make every tiny micro decision. Because by nature, I'm an ex-investment banker. I'm very, very detailed. I'm very, very hands-on. I'm a perfectionist. And it took quite a lot of work to really learn how to let go and when to let go. And I realized that was probably one of the biggest barriers to rapid growth, was trying to wear all the hats all at once. So that has been, an interesting personal journey for me.
I know you've got a team, but I was going to say, how did you do it? Because for me, it's me letting things go, but then also having the right people in place that can do this. These things won't go away. You still need to do them. But was it a case of you had the people in place, but you still weren't letting them get on with it, or you weren't ready to recruit, or a mixture of both?
I would say we were at the pre-seed stage. Your budget's tight. So all the different roles your company needs, but you also have a clear budget and you're not going to be able to fill all your dream roles. So it was about prioritizing what the business needed most and focusing on recruiting those roles. For me, the kind of most difficult role to let go of was the COO position. I kind of essentially was wearing the CEO, COO, and CFO hat all at once last year. And because I was the person who had uploaded our first product on the website, packaged our first order, wrote our first newsletter, posted our first Instagram post, I was so embedded in the weeds of everything that happened in the business. And I honestly loved every single little piece that makes Cult Me a tick. So to really start to remove myself to, being a proper CEO, being on the board of the company, being the face of, the liaison with investors, and really relying on someone else to keep me updated on what has happened in the last week was a huge cosmic change for me. And the biggest trigger was a personal one, which was I got pregnant last year. I was going to have a baby in June, exactly a year ago. And there was no way I was going to be able to go on maternity leave, come back and run the business in the same way, nor should that have been the case anyways, because the business was doubling in size every year or more. And it was time to split up my role. So I would say it was a positive forcing mechanism on the personal side that kind of unlocked that proper handover and delegation. But I needed a bit of a push. That's the truth.
Well, it's really hard because also, and in fact, this morning I watched a post I think that Elon Musk had made years and years ago about how being the boss or the founder or the person that started the business is awful. He said something about swallowing glass and looking into the abyss because you are the funnel where you delegate all the bits that can be done by other people and you're just left with the hard bits and the things that you don't even know how to fix. But that's why I think it's quite hard to let go of the Instagram post or the newsletter or the things that you did at the beginning, because you know how to do those and you can do those and you can tick them off a list and you get job satisfaction. When you're left with all the abyss bits, you're like, oh God, take me back to Instagram.
Yeah. I think going back to your initial point, it's all about trusting the people that you bring on board. And the bigger your business gets, you have the opportunity to attract real experts in different areas. And while you might think as the founder, because you've been in the business for the longest, you know best, you need to kind of do a little bit of a self-check and realize the people you're hiring with, 15 years of marketing under their belt know better than you. They might need some steers on your vision and the direction, but you need to let everyone feel empowered to do their roles. And that's when they'll do them best.
If you're paying someone your money to do the job for you, you hope they're going to be better than you.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it's true.
Gosh, so that forced nudge when you would take some time away from the business, how did you find that? Was it really difficult and conflicting because you wanted to do both? Or was it like, you know what, the team are there, I'm going to go on mat leave, I'll check in if they need me, but this is a good forced step away?
I would not say most people would probably call what I called my maternity leave as a real break.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I thought I would be able to properly disconnect for at least a few weeks, but given everything that was happening with our fundraise, it didn't prove to be possible. And there's just, like you said, certain things that you cannot delegate. And, negotiating terms, our valuation, etc., is not something I could hand over to anyone in the business, nor did I want to.
That cluster of timing is hard.
The timing, and like we said at the very start of this conversation, you can plan, but, sometimes that plan gets ripped up, and this was one of those moments. I felt like it was overwhelming with everything that was going on, but I had fantastic support networks. My team was incredible throughout, and they really, really came through and kind of showed the real team spirit. Interestingly enough, we're all women in the company at the moment. And I think there was a special kind of connection there during the mat leave period in particular. And then family, friends, on the personal side were hugely, hugely supportive and important in kind of helping me manage everything that was going on. But the reality is babies sleep a lot at the beginning. So you do have time to do work. And I think as long as you can kind of manage when you do it, you can find a balance. And I also think it's really important to know yourself. And I love what I do. I've always loved working. And I feel like I would bring the best energy to family time, kind of knowing that I was stimulating my mind and kind of keeping up with my work and so on.
Absolutely. And I think, what's the expression? Give somebody busy something to do because you know they're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And efficiency, I think not just in self-employment, but in any role, it gives a lot of people job satisfaction. And I have worked in the past with people who are inefficient, but they still seem to get job satisfaction. I just don't understand how they do it. I am OCD. I get laser focused on things. I love ticking things off a list. That list will always, this is something I realized last year in year 3 was that the list is never going to end. There's always, as soon as you get something off the top, something else will bubble up. And if you run out of things to do, then you've got to worry about it. But with efficiency of time, are there any systems and processes other than time blocking that you'd recommend founders take into their day to day? For me, someone gave the great advice of say no to meetings that don't have agendas. And I was like, great. If someone doesn't know what they're coming to the meeting for, then just say no. Has technology and software helped you scale as well? How important has that been in your business development?
I would say quite hugely important. We have focused really early on in our journey on what are the blockers and how can we automate them. And for a business like Cult Mia, I realized one of the barriers to growth and efficiency was manually uploading products from the designers that we work with. And there was literally only a certain amount of products the team had capacity to upload on a weekly basis. So in year 1, we developed an automated onboarding tool, which not even a platform like Farfetch had, because, we were thinking, how can we catch up with some of these big platforms quickly? And how can we really make that process efficient? So we went from about 2 days of work to bring a designer online just on the e-com side. Today, it's down to 30 minutes, which is pretty incredible. Again, thinking
anything to save time. Yeah.
Anything to save time, but also to remove manual checks, manual error. There was a lot of also thinking about treating our designers as customers and not just shoppers and making the onboarding process really easy and efficient for them. So quite a few efficiency angles that we were looking at to kind of rapid scale, but be able to sustain much, much bigger demand in the future as well.
So that automation piece is key.
It's super, super, super key. And that touched on different parts of the platform and the customer journey. Things like site merchandising take a huge amount of work for e-com businesses, literally moving products around. And other platforms have huge headcounts dedicated to site merchandising. We don't have a single headcount because we have an AI-driven site merchandising tool based on your own profile data, really focusing on kind of a personalized offering, which was completely game-changing for us.
Doubt about it. When was the light bulb moment?
It came hand in hand with wanting to add more brands and products. So you want to upload lots of brands, but then you want to maintain the discoverability and the experience for customers. So we're like, okay, we fixed this automated upload process. We're going to have tons of new products coming live every week. Gosh, now we have to make sure that we're merchandising them appropriately. How are we going to keep up with that? So it was a little bit of a chain effect of kind of automated one piece. Now need to think about how to kind of automate or alleviate the workload for the impact that that's had.
It's really interesting because I think a lot of the solutions we found have come out of really big problems. So I've been presented with a problem where I've gone, oh God, this is a potential nightmare. But then being put into that hot water and going, how do I fix this? We've then found answers for many, many other things. So I think someone else called it the trampoline effect, where you hit rock bottom, you bounce back up stronger. And I really like it because and every single guest has said, be okay with the roller coaster. And I am not okay with it, but I accept it. But that when you're at the bottom, you're so excited because you're about to go back up again. And so when you're in the thick of that problem solving, you're like, well, what else am I going to learn? And for you, that really, my favorite quote of all time has been from Yuan Yong, where he said, automate, delegate, solve. If anything keeps cropping up, just do those 3 things. Automate, find the process, delegate it to someone who's better than you, or solve the problem, fire the person, hire the person, whatever it might be, fix it. So it stops recurring in your brain, so you free it up for the next thing. And this automation piece, especially for your platform, I'm sure was completely game changing. Are there any other pieces of software? Like, I mean, I I kind of joke that when you're self-employed when you spell zero with an X. There's other software platforms that I've become mildly addicted to, like Canva, Toggle for our time tracking. What other platforms do you use?
Yeah. So we also use Zero. We also use Canva. We use Asana for project management, which we absolutely love. It's kind of like Trello. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
it, but can really build out really clear roadmap, calendars, project management, delegation, task and time management feeds right into your calendar. So we found that to be incredibly, incredibly useful. Freshworks, actually.
Oh, Freshworks.
So it's a whole kind of CRM customer service system that channels all of our messages, whether it's social media DMs, emails, live chats, all under one platform, can be reassigned to different members of our team that don't just sit in customer service, and kind of grouping all the customer requests and comms under one roof has been game changing in the last quarter for us.
I always think also with these things, less is more, because you want a few that talk to each other. But if you had 100 logins, it's a pain.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah. Is it always the case that you need to hire more people to scale your company? I don't think it might be in this case.
Absolutely not. Interestingly enough, our kind of operational expenses as a percentage of our turnover revenue is less than 15%, which means we've been able to really scale up incredibly, incredibly efficient. So we have kind of the core team in place to really maintain all the key functions, support this next stage of growth, because we did so much of the automation work early on. And the business is really set up to run on its own efficiently now. And it's just about kind of overseeing and iterating and making those incremental improvements with the heavy lifting. Yeah, I love a lean team. And I think everyone has a really clear and defined role. And everyone who joins the business, we've spent a lot of time scoping out specifically what they will do. And I think if you ask anyone in the business, they would kind of refer to our team as like a football team, like an American football team, where there's like the running back, the quarterback. I love that analogy because it just speaks to everyone knowing their kind of purpose and contributions and being able to come together behind our kind of big mission and goal really efficiently and effectively.
I find it really funny. A lot of people, when they find out I'm self-employed, ask me how many people I employ, as if that is a metric of success.
No.
And everyone has a sort of different idea. They're like, oh, wow, you employ X many people. That means in their brain something. And I'm like, no, for me, if I can just employ 3 people and we are doing what we're doing and we've got the client testimonials that are coming in, I'm thrilled. It's less payroll, less pensions, less annual leave, less worry, less responsibility. Less is 100% is my mantra for this year. Less is more. But I think on the outside world, people kind of think headcount equals success. And I feel like it's the opposite.
I was just going to say, probably one of the things I'm most proud of, we were on Sifted's fastest growing startup list this year.
Congratulations.
The only fashion business on there. They picked 100 companies. And one of the metrics that they put was employee number. And they took the figures from the end of 2023 when we were 8 people. I'm not joking. We must have been at least 5 times smaller team size than every other company on there. And it really speaks to that kind of like success metric, employing a huge amount of people. Yeah. But I kind of want to say, like, maybe you should rank us higher for achieving this growth with such a tight knit kind of.
Totally. Quality, not quantity.
But yeah, you're right. I think it'll take time for, I guess, the world to rate team size a little bit differently.
It all comes down to efficiency. If you've got less people doing more work at a very high level and everybody's happy, that is success for me. And it's a constant question I ask is, what does success look like to us? And that is something that has cropped up quite a lot, because people are the hardest part of any business, I think. And I was going to say, when you're scaling the business, how do you avoid that duplication of work? Because presumably they're not all reporting to you. You've talked about letting things go and letting your department heads have that responsibility. But how do you ensure that efficiency is trickled down, or trickled through, I should say, the business?
That is a good question.
It's something about scoping people's roles a lot before you brought them on. Is that due diligence piece at the beginning? Does that save you time later on, do you think?
It definitely saves time, because that means that everyone knows their remit. It means that everyone has very clear sets of responsibilities and they know their territory and they can really own it. And that sense of ownership, I think, by nature really creates efficiency because then you don't spend a lot of time going up and down asking who should do what and what do I need approval for what. We have really clear financial delegation of authority and a decision making matrix. So when you think about if you're getting stuck on how to prioritize your work, we have the three core metrics we're trying to impact, but we're also ranking them and the spin-off metrics from there. So if you're like, should I run this promotional campaign or should I launch an ambassador program? Well, you'll think about the metrics that these two pieces impact. You'll think about kind of our decision matrix of how those metrics stack up. And then the answer is quite clear. Actually, right now we're focused on top line growth. So we're going to go with a promotional strategy because we need to boost revenue. Completely made that example up, but just to bring to life that I think giving the team a really clear visual picture of what should we be focused on moving and in what priority answers a lot of questions.
Yeah. I used to work for some lovely luxury brands, but I'd never experienced self-employment. I'd witnessed my father, who was self-employed, but he worked as a one-man band. So I'd never seen it as a team. And I had a CEO once that was obsessed with going through the Instagram copy. And I was like, haven't you got better things to do than this?
Yeah.
And we go round and round and round the houses, and it just was never let out of the door. And I left the business in the end and said, I don't have any job satisfaction. I can't achieve anything. This isn't working for me in my role. I think especially when you get time poor, you get really good at saving that efficiency. But I was going to sort of go on to the question of, as you've got bigger, have you found it harder to be as efficient or actually easier because you've got these systems in place?
It's an interesting one. I think as a business grows, obviously complexity increases and it can make efficient scaling more challenging. But I think if you have the right systems, processes, team with a mindset of, continuous improvement, it's definitely manageable and sustainable. So it really comes back to the groundwork that you've done at the beginning, maintaining kind of that agile thinking and mindset to keep auditing your own thinking processes and structures so that you are continuing to be set up for that efficient scaling, the bigger and bigger that you get.
So never rest on your laurels and don't ever take anything for granted.
That's a much better way of saying it.
Oh, no, not at all. It's just, and also in English, we have so many expressions for things. I worked for a Californian boss in New York once.
Yeah.
And I'd said, oh God, it's raining cats and dogs. I was working in New York. It's like, what? I know those are English words, but I just don't know what you're saying. Because I just come out with all these expressions. And she just, don't even get me started on the Australian version, but she just would laugh at how many weird colloquialisms we have over here. So just quick fire questions. I think you may have answered these already, but if you have anything else to add, please do. Otherwise, we'll just chop them out. How do you protect your time?
I would say by prioritizing tasks, really delegating effectively, setting up my own boundaries. And I said this already, and it's not revolutionary, but really time blocking to ensure I focus on the most high impact activities or work that needs to be done.
Thank you. I time blocked once and then was like, oh God, I've been completely unrealistic of how long I think things take. I was like, I've got 30 things to do today. I'm going to time block them. And I'm like, oh no, that's not going to happen. That's just not, what was I thinking? It's hilarious. When you're coming to prioritize things, is there advice you'd give somebody how to do that?
I would say you focus on your tasks that align with your long-term goals and have the highest impact. And then from there, you categorize kind of the tasks by urgency and importance and tackle the most critical ones first. And I keep coming back to this, but I love the concept of the 5 whys to really drill down on what will make that impact and keep you focused on your North Stars. Because it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole, especially, going back to the roller coaster. You can have a great week as a startup. You can have a not great week, and you can spend a huge amount of time dissecting why your sales went down 1 week, when really you can focus on the big picture and realize you're still on track and you still have lots of work to do to keep yourself moving in the right direction.
And not waste time on the worry. Someone told me that recently. I found that really useful. It's like, well, where's that going to get you? Unless you're learning something from it, don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And how would you avoid feeling overwhelmed by everything? Because you've got an incredible business, you have a family, you've achieved so much. How do you manage that overwhelm? Or does it come and go?
I would say I try to break things down into digestible pieces because when you're growing a business, you feel like you get over one little hump. You did a fundraise and then you get to the top of the peak and you see a much higher mountain in front of you. So that can feel overwhelming. But I think if you really think about breaking things down into smaller tasks that you can get the satisfaction of ticking off your list, manageable kind of steps, taking regular breaks and trying your best to maintain a healthy work-life balance, as easy as that sounds, it's not always so easy. That has helped me kind of stay focused and not get too overwhelmed.
And someone did say, when you get to the end, by the way, there isn't one, will you have ticked it off the list, or actually is it the day to day that you need to learn to enjoy? And I was like, oh God, that's really hard. And that work-life balance, taking yourself out of the weeds and removing yourself from it to then have perspective on it, I found quite helpful. Is there one thing that you do to relax and recharge yourself?
Honestly, for me, it's being outdoors, whether it's running or just really long walks through the park, getting out of the city. I feel like it really, really clears my head. I also love to exercise. I've always played lots of sports my whole life. Just a proper disconnect from my phone and my laptop is the best way to help me relax and recharge. I went on a family safari 2 years ago. And the first day that we were out in Botswana, my phone didn't work. There was no signal. No one told me. I think my parents did it on purpose. So like I would pre-freak out that I wouldn't be getting emails. And I kept checking my phone the first day. Like there was nothing coming through. There was no signal, but that habit of just like constantly checking on the latest. And then the next day and over the next week, honestly, I could not have been happier. What a liberation. To recreate that within reason. A week is not really possible, to do all the time.
But even a few hours is golden. I saw a friend in the co-working office we use yesterday, and he said, I've been out the office all day at meetings. I've just got to clear my emails. I was like, I've done this before. Do you find it actually you can clear a whole day's worth of emails much quicker when you sit down in one batch rather than sit at your laptop hour in, hour out? And he's like, actually, you make a really good point.
It's so true. I don't know if you've worked a bit kind of remotely and you wake up and it's already, 2, 3 p.m. in London and you have all your emails. You can just bang them out rather than being dripped at emails and constantly checking.
Totally.
I find it so efficient.
I used to work in Australia for a French brand. So I'd overnight get all my answers and then I had the whole day to get back to them.
So nice.
Yeah.
I love that structure, honestly.
You
for yourself if you just don't check your email every 10 minutes, Well,
it really hit home. I went back to Australia for a couple of months last winter to get away from London's winter. And my team made me laugh. They were like, yeah, we kind of preferred it when you were over there because, you just leave us alone all day and then we'd leave you alone all day. So we just kept handing things back over to each other with a time difference because it was so extreme. We'd have an hour overlap maybe.
So good.
And it worked so well because you can just get one thing done at a time rather than feeling like you're pulled in a million different directions, which is blissful.
That is the dream.
Something that we do is we always have a question from the previous guest for the next guest. And Hinge from Waldencast had a question for you around what is the big goal with your business and what keeps you going?
The big goal, I really, really want to be the destination for independent and ethical luxury fashion. Why that's the goal? We didn't speak about this, but, I spent part of my career at the UN working with a team called Women in Trade, helping women-owned micro enterprises scale up in the most remote parts of the world, in the most challenging circumstances, across violence, poverty. And I saw these women succeed against all the odds out there. And it really, really inspired me to continue on that mission in some capacity through Cult Mia. And yes, there's huge commercial goals behind the scaling to be the biggest independent fashion destination out there. But the knock-on effects that we have on the communities, on the women, on the, ethical brands that we support are enormous. And the comments that we get back from the designers that we work with saying being listed on the platform has, allowed them to send their kids to school or allowed them to finish building their house. There's no bigger motivation than feeling like your work, which on the outside might seem like this kind of, superficial fashion business, has so much depth on the impact side. And I would say that for me personally has always been a huge motivation. And one of the reasons why I wanted to set up this business.
It's going back to that being resolute in your value. Like, there's a bigger why here, what you're doing this for, and that will motivate you to the cows come home. There you go. It's another English expression. And would you have a question for our next guest?
What would make you feel outside of, a big check or a big valuation? What would truly make you feel like you've succeeded in what you're building?
It's a big question, but you need it because it isn't about the money. It's definitely got to be a bigger why. I love that. Thank you so much. It's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you for your time and huge congratulations on everything you've done. I mean, you've made it look very easy, but I'm sure it's not.
No. And there's an army behind me. So I would say it's a big, big team effort. And I'm super proud of the Coltmia team.
It's an efficient army too.
Very efficient army, I have to say. Really nice to chat this morning, Juliet. Thank you.
I really hope you've enjoyed this conversation. You can find a recap of all the advice so kindly shared by our guest in the show notes along with their contact details. We'd love it if you could rate and review or share this podcast because it really does help other people discover it. To incentivize this a little, I would very happily offer you one of our PR guides on how to share editorial coverage legally. Just DM us or send us an email hello@fallowfieldmason.com with review in the title and we'll share it on.